All right, let's go. Good evening, everyone. I am Nikki Woods, and I am so glad you're here for the Cycles of Gaia Educators webinar. Tonight is about connection to each other, to our communities, and to the living earth that makes all of this possible. We'll hear ideas and stories you can take straight into your classrooms, all grounded in the rhythms of the planet. Our first guide tonight is also our visionary. It is Erik Assadourian, a sustainability thinker and storyteller who has spent decades exploring how humanity can live well within the limits of our Earth. From co-authoring books to designing games and even TV shows that challenge consumer culture, Erik's work always points towards a culture rooted in balance, community, and care for the planet. He will share the Gaian Way's mission and why education might just be the most powerful shift point we have. So, welcome, Erik Assadourian.
Thank you so much, Nikki. There we go. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm really glad to have you here as we launch the Cycles of Gaia curriculum. As time is short, I only want to spend a moment offering a bit of context to this work. In 2019, I founded the Gaian Way, which is an organization working to help people understand that they are part of and completely dependent on the living earth. It's this lack of understanding that ultimately has led to our sustainability crisis. From extracting and burning millions of years of mineral wealth in the matter of 10 generations, to the resulting climate change, plastic pollution, biodiversity loss, and dozens of other environmental challenges we now face. While you can argue that the sustainability crisis is driven primarily by our growth-centric consumer cultures, and believe you, I have many times, at the very heart, these cultural systems are possible because we no longer understand our relationship with and our dependence on the larger living Earth system, Gaia. We need to transform cultures so that once again, we understand our dependence. The Gaian Way does this through providing weekly reflections, online events, local nature gatherings in Connecticut, New Orleans, and Honolulu, where local Gaian guilds have been established, and through projects like our weekly radio program, Earth Eclectic, and of course, the Cycles of Gaia Ecological calendar. This calendar was sparked by the discovery by me, not directly, but learning of a calendar like this created for Puerto Rico. I fell in love with this re-envisioning of the passage of the year, oriented not on human holidays, but on the fruiting, flowering, and leafing of native plants of the island. And happily, I found a talented collaborator, Connecticut artist John Schroth, who you'll hear from next, to bring the idea to our coastal woodland ecosystem here in New England. You can see how much it's evolved under John's beautiful crafting for New England, which he'll discuss. He'll explore more about the calendar in a moment, but I do want to end with pointing out that from the beginning of this process, we planned to develop an educational curriculum for this calendar to ensure that teachers could take this beautiful artistic work and bring it into their classrooms and utilize it to teach their students a different way of seeing the world, one that used to be common in the days of the first peoples of New England, and one that is essential if we are to survive and thrive in the rapidly changing world our students are inheriting. While a difficult transition is now inevitable, ecological literacy, systems thinking, and especially a respect of the planetary limits that are an integral part of life in Gaia will help students, who will become future leaders, to navigate these turbulent times and to help create a more just, resilient, and sustainable future for all species. Thanks again for joining us tonight, and especially thanks to our teachers who have crafted these engaging and informative curricula for the Cycles of Gaia Ecological calendar.
Thank you, Erik. We really appreciate the vision and you guiding us through it. Our next speaker is John Schroth, an artist who traded movie studios for the turning seasons. After years of bringing animated words to life, John is now mapping the rhythms of the real one. He's developed this ecological calendar based on Erik's vision. His work invites us to step outside, to notice, and to reconnect with the cycles that have shaped life here for millennia. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, here it is. So the calendar, it's a richly detailed visual with the goal of recentering our conception of time on the local ecosystem. As Erik said, our ecosystem we are surrounded by, we are dependent upon, and indeed part of, specifically and most directly our local ecosystem. So when Erik and I found this image of Puerto Rico that he showed, we both kind of birthed this idea out of just the simple desire to see our surroundings depicted in this same way, and curiosity to see what it would become. So in order to center our time perception of time on our ecosystem, we track 20 common tree and shrub species here in southern New England, and we depict a year of their collective activity as colorful rings of leaves, flowers, and fruit, as well as the primary forces that drive them, daylight and precipitation. The days and months are subtly indicated, giving the viewer a familiar landmark which they can orient themselves to at any time. Now, to share about how I made this calendar, really every mark of color on the black canvas is guided by this multitude of real living organisms. Harvard Forest has been meticulously recording observations of these organisms for the past 30 years and making the data available to the public. This data consists of this dauntingly large list of discrete observations. Each observation, each entry in their observations notes what a specific individual plant is doing at a specific moment in time. And so I combined their observations with data recorded in the Budburst app by amateur naturalists in the broader region. And then, with a great deal of help from a computer, I combined processed tens of thousands of these instances of time experienced by individual plants and combined them to find regional averages for the entire species. Combining further, I put all 20 species back together into 3 bands, and the thickness of each band is determined by how many species in the group collectively hold leaves, flowers, or fruit on their branches at a given time during the year. These were wrapped into a circle, these bands, and lastly, the illustrations were placed inside of the undulating bands. The unique shapes of each species mix to form a harmonious pattern, and in response to the summer's outstretched rays, they seem to surge together and then recede as a single entity. The ecological calendar finds itself somewhere between education and art. It's educational in that it helps familiarize viewers with the life cycles of common species they encounter daily. Yet, as you all know, educating is more than presenting information, and information presentation has never been the driving force, nor the sole rubric for my design decisions. Beauty has always been held with equal importance. I hope the viewer is filled with more than mere information, but also a sense of awe or reverence for the natural cycles of the earth. I hope and believe that is true for the students following these curricula also. So Because within eyeshot of most doors here in the southern New England are several members of the species depicted. They each lead delightful lives, and they call us outside to experience the seasons with them. In a globally connected culture, we can learn about distant topics anywhere, but the most important and most meaningful of all places is the place where one lives, for it is our only direct interface with the real natural world. The truest learning happens when knowledge from the classroom is reinforced by encounters with tangible reality. So local, seasonal content is always the most ripe for study. We've been fortunate to connect with educators who share this approach. And now, here in the Northeast, we are all incredibly lucky to have these new, free, inspiring lesson plans available on the website to download for anybody. They're custom tailored to this fascinating and peculiar place where we call home, inviting all grade levels to grow more deeply attuned to the cycles of Gaia right here around us. I will also mention that the poster, the actual printed poster is also available for free by mail. We ship it for free, no postage required no postage cost required to any educators in the area who fill out the form on the website. So thank you all for coming, and back to you, Nikki.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you. And so now you have seen the mission and we've seen the tools. Now let's see what it looks like in a real classroom. 4 educators, 4 grade bands, and each bringing the cycles of Gaia to life for their students. So first we have Denise Kraft. She is the primary years program coordinator at Lawrence School in Middleton, Connecticut. Denise helps young learners explore their local landscapes, then show them how these same patterns echo around the globe. For her, nature isn't just a subject, it is the starting point for every skill our children will need to thrive. Welcome, Denise.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen. So happy to be kicking off the K through 2 curriculum tonight. Okay. If you would like to follow along on the PDF and explore the resources as I'm sharing the lessons, please feel free to scan the QR code that I have on your screen right now. I'll give everyone just a moment for that. It's okay if you are unable to access the QR code. I will be sharing some additional visuals to give you a sense of what the curriculum looks like. All right, so one key element that I would like to point out is that our curriculum mirrors the design of the Cycles of Gaia calendar itself, which is that year-long seasonal structure or cycle. The calendar itself anchors the curriculum and can be used to provoke curiosity and spark inquiry into the natural world. In these lessons, students will get to know their natural neighbors and begin a relationship with these beings. Our hope is that by developing a more personal relationship with these species, students will want to protect and advocate for them. If you're curious about how the lessons might align or complement the content in your context, we've written them using a transdisciplinary approach, including content from the subjects of science, ELA, and even makerspace. We reference particular Common Core and next generation science standards in the individual lesson plans. We've also included suggested read aloud texts and links to the online resources to enhance the learning. For those of you who were unable to access the PDF from the QR code, here's just a snapshot of how our lessons are presented. You'll notice that there's the relevant standards in the upper right, as well as the time allotment of the lessons to support educators with planning. You'll also find detailed descriptions of the lesson procedures, objectives being addressed, materials, and assessment options and opportunities. In some cases, there are also scoring rubrics to assist teachers with implementing the assessments as well. You have many options, different options for how you use the lessons. For example, you could roll out the lessons in a sequential pattern throughout the year, mirroring the cycle of the calendar. You can also dip into particular lessons at seasonal points or strategic points to use as standalone content. In many K through 2 classroom environments, there's usually a daily calendar time. So, using the human-based calendar in parallel with the ecological calendar is a great way to roll out this content. They can also be used nicely. We've done this in our building as a transition from recess back into the academic block as students are coming in from being outside. This is always a time where students may need support with getting ready for learning after running around. So for example, educators might, while students are outside, collect leaves on their way in to sort them into similar shapes and then reference the calendar to support with identifying them. And then finally, the materials that we used in the curriculum design, we sought to be commonly available in classrooms. For example, loose parts, recyclable materials, journals, and art materials. We do understand that in many contexts, being able to cite academic outcomes for learning experiences may be very important. So we've shared some of the outcomes of this learning, such as gaining an understanding of the parts of a plant, developing models through maker activities, building language skills, including questioning and vocabulary development, students building those early research skills through careful sensory observations, engaging in the engineering design process and developing critical thinking skills, and finally, lots of opportunities for students to engage in collaborative learning. The benefits for our students with this type of approach and our resources in particular include providing those opportunities for outdoor learning throughout the year. There's no such thing as bad weather, only being inappropriately dressed. And then students engaging in inquiry-based sensory learning experiences as they get to know and understand their new friend species through noticing the features and changes they go throughout the year. Students really can benefit from that multisensory approach as they use their senses to discover the variety of colors, textures, scents, and patterns that they uncover while exploring their new natural friends. Here's an example of just the scope and sequence of our lessons. So in lesson 1, they begin noticing and wondering, exploring the calendar as a provocation to spark their curiosity about the natural world. Lesson 2 moves on to a study of the parts of a plant, so they learn the names of common plant structures. In lesson 3, they are introduced to their plant friends, so using a variety of text or a multitude of plant identification apps that we've suggested in the resources, students can go out, meet their new plant friend on the campus, and begin recording their observations in their journals with opportunities to revisit their friend throughout the year. Then they move into creating plant models with makerspace materials. So students then transfer their understanding of plant structures during play-based learning using loose parts and other maker materials to create a model of their plant friend. Then they go into researching their wonders, comparing and contrasting their plant drawings in their journals and their representations to draw out generalizations of features that are commonly found in all plants or what plants need to grow and thrive. And then this is a touch point for capturing their questions for continued research. Then we move into observing the plant's life cycle, so broadening and taking a look at the cyclical nature of that organism. So having visited their plant friend over time, they then describe the life cycle of their plants, and then we move into the final assessment, where students apply their model making skills to representing the life cycle of a plant and applying the new vocabulary of their plant structures. For example, in our school, students noticed the service berry that we had on campus, and this generated lots of questions that they had, wondering if the berries were poisonous to humans or animals, and wanting to watch to see who is eating the service berry friend that they discovered. We've also, in the resources, shared some really great read alouds that were curated to support the content. Many of these are very commonly found in classroom or school libraries and readily available also online. And then we also have included a calendar worksheet you can see on the lower left there that mirrors the structure of the calendar and can be used for note-taking and documenting the students' observations of their plant friends throughout the year. There's lots of opportunities for students to take action on their new learning and share with an authentic audience. They might present their information to their families, and they might be inspired to plant, having made friends with this organism, they might want to plant one on their own, in their own homes, and continue to advocate and even teach others about all they've learned about their new friend. And with that, I turn it back over to Nikki.
Thank you so much, Denise. That was a wonderful presentation. I get excited every time I see those visuals pop up. And so we're going to continue with Carrie Darby. She is the school librarian at Lawrence School, a public international baccalaureate school for grades K through 5, also in Middletown, Connecticut. Carrie's path has taken her through environmental education programs and elementary classrooms, and that experience shapes the way she works with students today, sustaining their natural curiosity through student-led inquiry, rich literature, and hands-on makerspace projects that connect learning to the real world. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I'm here to talk about the curriculum for grades 3 through 5, and I'm thrilled to be here. And I want to thank everybody for joining us because this is really work that we're really proud of. So the curriculum for grades 3 through 5 is 10 lessons in 3 different modules. Our goal with these lessons is to help students appreciate the natural world through a case study of the sugar maple, focusing on the concepts of life cycles, change, relationship, and stewardship of the local environment. These lessons can be used in multiple settings, including schools, nature centers, after-school programs, and camps. We provide a sequence, but obviously, you can use the lessons in a way that makes sense for you. For those of you who are teaching in a classroom setting, we have included Common Core English Language Arts, Next Generation Science Standards, and Social Studies standards, but these lessons could easily connect with other standards. And many of the curricular goals that Denise mentioned also apply to the 3-5 curriculum. When we started writing the curriculum, we realized that much of the information we found centered on maple sugaring and other ways that humans use trees as a resource. In keeping with the spirit of Gaian Way, we worked to include more lessons that focused on the intrinsic value of trees as members of the larger forest ecosystem. We were happy to discover lots of books and online resources to support these lessons, and most of them are easy to find at the library or online. Most importantly with this curriculum, we want kids to have fun, to be outside, to observe, to explore, to question, to discuss, and to create. The first module, hold on. Oh, there it is. It's a little slow. The first module focuses on trees and their role in the forest ecosystem. We begin by learning what trees are and what distinguishes them from other plants. Kids start by looking at the Cycles of Gaia ecological calendar and also by spending time outside, observing trees in nature. They can use the suggested text and online resources to help answer their questions. They can make a graphic organizer to record their learning. Kids can add to this graphic organizer throughout the year as they develop new knowledge and understandings. In the second lesson, Students learn more specifically about the sugar maple and how it differs from other maple species. We've shared a link to a video that has a clear explanation of the different types of maples. The books you see on this slide also have nice graphics to support with this. Then this is another opportunity for kids to go outside and look at these different trees for themselves. Lesson 3 highlights the life cycle of the sugar maple. Kids can begin by revisiting the Cycles of Gaia ecological calendar and using the key to find the different structures of the sugar maple. They can look at a sugar maple outside and see which of the sugar maple structures are present at which times of the year. They can use their observations to create their own cyclical calendar and compare it to the one from Cycles of Gaia. Lesson 4 begins with a quote by naturalist Hal Borland that helps kids understand that trees are connected to other beings in an ecosystem. They can listen to the book, A Tree is a Home, which is a simple and beautifully illustrated text that shows how different animals tend on an oak tree at different times throughout the year. As a librarian, I am always thrilled to find a book that clearly teaches a concept, and this is definitely one of those books. Lesson 5 widens the lens onto the forest ecosystem again, this time including fungi and its connection to trees. The books and videos for this lesson explain how there is an underground network of roots and mycelium which allow trees to communicate and support each other. I learned so much from the videos and books myself. These are two more excellent books for explaining these concepts. And I think the kids are really going to be excited to learn about these concepts for themselves. Now we're on to Module 2. This transitions from the sugar maple's role in the forest ecosystem to learning about humans' relationship with the sugar maple. In Lesson 6, there are videos and books sharing stories explaining how Indigenous people learned about maple syrup, as well as information about how they produced and used maple syrup. Lesson 7 expands on Lesson 6 and helps kids understand the methods that Indigenous people in the past used to make maple syrup, with an emphasis on using materials they found in their environment. In this lesson, kids also have a chance to try baskets. Sometimes we might skip an activity like this because we think it might take too long, it might be too hard for the kids, or, as classroom teachers, we want to focus on the facts or the standards. But I think this could be a really impactful lesson. It will take the kids a long time to do something like this, to make a basket. They'll struggle. But do you think they would value something differently that required so much effort on their part compared to something that they could get with one click and have delivered the next day? So something to think about for sure. There's even more to this lesson. It's also an excellent opportunity to take a field trip or connect virtually or in person with an expert. The Mashantucket Pequot Museum in southeastern Connecticut has a web page dedicated to maple sugaring, and they could be a great resource for this. Lesson 8 explores how colonists adapted the process of maple sugaring using their own ideas and tools. They can compare the methods of early Americans with those of Native Americans. Again, there's an opportunity for discussion with an expert or maybe a field trip. Sturbridge Village in Massachusetts has a maple sugaring unit, and there are also many people who run their own sugar maple houses and could be a potential resource. The last module focuses on our relationship with the sugar maple today. Lesson 9 goes into greater detail of modern maple sugaring practices and invites the kids to consider humans' interaction with the sugar maple and whether we have a parasitic or a symbiotic relationship with this tree. This lesson also describes threats to the sugar maple, such as disease, habitat loss, and climate change. This lesson sets the stage for the final lesson. Oh, on a side note, any of the previous lessons on maple sugaring would be an ideal time to have a maple syrup tasting. You could have the kids try different grades, different species of maple, or maybe try maple syrup from different places and see what they notice about the different types. I think they would really love this. Finally, lesson 10 has the kids review what they have learned about the sugar maple and the forest ecosystem in previous lessons. They think about the interconnectedness of the sugar maple with other living beings, including humans, and they listen to the story of Wangari's Trees of Peace to learn about the idea of stewardship and sustainability. Kids can then develop a plan for how they can take authentic action to protect the sugar maple and other living beings in the forest ecosystem. It's been an honor to work with the team on this project, and we're so excited to share it with you all. We hope you find it to be a beautiful, broad, immersive experience for your kids. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share with you all.
No, thank you. That was wonderful. So we have two more presenters to go. And before we move on, just a quick reminder, teachers get a free copy of the Cycles of Gaia poster. Just send us an email via cyclesofgaia.com/free-poster. So our next presenter is Jessica Delgado Miller. She's a bilingual scientist teacher who brings green spaces to the heart of New York City. With roots in environmental policy and service overseas, she helps her students see that nature is not somewhere far away. It's here, woven into our daily lives, even in the most urban neighborhoods. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Nikki, for such a lovely introduction. I'm really happy to be here and really excited to be sharing this space with such great minds. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So this is the Cycles of Gaia grades 6 through 8 curriculum that I created. Now, the Cycles of Gaia middle school curriculum is intended to empower students to observe and interpret ecological patterns and seasonal changes through the lens of an alternative nature-based calendar, the Cycles of Gaia calendar. It's grounded in local species, but we shift away from the magnificent sugar maple deciduous tree to the evergreen eastern white pine tree. It is intended to deepen student understanding of core science, math, ELA, and social studies standards. But it also incorporates hands-on modeling, urban and forest-based inquiry, and climate-relevant action projects. And it really, truly aims to build empathy with the natural world, build systems thinking skills, and create a sense of environmental stewardship. Unlike a typical textbook unit, this calendar centers time around natural cues, bud bursts, migration, snow melt, making science personal, relevant, and observable. Through the 6th through 8 curriculum, we wanted to reimagine science through seasonal rhythms. The Cycles of Gaia calendar replaces abstract dates with local seasonal ecological phases. This makes science personal and observable. Students aren't just memorizing, they're noticing, they're journaling, and reflecting on real-time phenomena like budding or seed dispersal. This curriculum invites a shift from learning about ecosystems to building a relationship with them, as Carrie also greatly pointed out in the 3 through 5 curriculum. Now, overall, the curriculum is structured into 12 lessons organized into 4 thematic modules. Each lesson blends science with social studies, math, or ELA, making this ideal for cross-curricular collaboration. For example, students model water cycles using local maps, simulate food webs, and study inherited traits through forest genetics. And there is also a hands-on focus, so you can expect simulations, local walks, and collaborative discussions. Students even get a chance to map real-world observations like the pine cone growth or insect buzz to Gaia phases, the Cycles of Gaia phases. building scientific habits of noticing and patterning. Excuse me. So let's dive right in. Module 1 is all about energy, water, and ecological rhythms. Module 2 dives into biodiversity, food webs, and indigenous knowledge. Module 3 dives into climate and urban systems. And lastly, Module 4 dives into genetics, natural selection, and stewardship. Now, each lesson aligns with NGSS and integrates ELA math and social studies, as well as indigenous ecological knowledge. Let's see. So the 6 through 8 curriculum is aligned, as we said, with the NGSS, the next generation science standards, and has an additional interdisciplinary component. The curriculum is built directly from NGSS performance expectations, whereby each of the 12 lessons explicitly addresses at least one NGSS standard. For instance, the MSLS 2.3 on cycling of matter, or MSLS 4.4 on genetic variation, ensuring content rigor. It also incorporates three-dimensional learning, in that students engage in the science and engineering practices through modeling, data analysis, argument from evidence. They engage in cross-cutting concepts through systems, cause and effect, and patterns, and the DCIs, or disciplinary core ideas, through life science study and earth sciences. Additionally, this curriculum provides authentic phenomena that was created just for this curriculum, given its use of the eastern white pine and local seasonal patterns as anchoring phenomena, making the NGSS more relevant and place-based for the New England region. Here's a fun fact for New York City educators. In researching tree mapping, there's an abundance of eastern white pine in Central Park because it was a prominent tree in the region before European settlement, and its presence in the park reflects its historical importance. And lastly, this curriculum offers entry points for other subjects, given many lessons naturally have an interdisciplinary extension, integrating ELA math practices and math practices outlined in the NGSS connections, like analyzing graphs or writing explanations or citing evidence. Let's take a closer look at how the curriculum aligns with NGSS. You will find standard alignment nomenclature. Nomenclature. Still learning how to pronounce that one in English. Written in each lesson outline. Additionally, in Module 1, students map seasonal ecological patterns using the Cycles of Gaia calendar, modeling cycling of matter, energy flow, and water movement in ecosystems. In Module 2, hands-on models show how thermal energy, gravity, wind, and structural adaptations affect species survival through the year. Now in Module 3, simulations and Punnett squares reveal how inherited traits influence population resilience and adaptation to environmental change. Lastly, in Module 4, students analyze human impacts on ecosystems, design engineering solutions, and propose community-based stewardship projects. Now, in our vision for making a lasting and positive impact on Earth, this curriculum invites students and teachers alike to start with what's local, whereby students observe trees, track fruits, or record sounds. You can use these as seasonal projects or a full year arc across content areas. The lessons are great for science, humanities, advisory, or after-school settings. And they help students move from learning about ecosystems to belonging in them. By offering a modular classroom integration, the Cycles of Gaia 6 through 8 curriculum offers flexible entry points. Given the 12 lessons are grouped into 4 thematic modules, the teachers can integrate single lessons or partial modules without needing to complete the full sequence. Additionally, seasonal adaptability is also a part of this curricula. Lessons can be aligned with the local Cycles of Gaia calendar phases, whereby teachers can swap the order or pace of activities to match actual seasonal signs in the region. There are cross-subject opportunities provided, as I mentioned in the past, and there's scaffolded complexity, given early lessons build foundational observation and systems thinking skills, while the later lessons tackle higher order applications like modeling genetic variation or designing climate adapted structures. And lastly, urban or rural contexts are given. Basically, all lessons are designed for flexibility. So if you're in the city, if you're in a more urban setting or a more rural setting, observations can still be made in forests, schoolyards, urban blocks, really allowing access for all students. Now, I wanted to give you a few examples. In Module 2, for example, in Lesson 4 on living systems and human connections, educators are given 3 activities through which students can engage, explore, and explain their understanding of the Eastern White Pine ecosystem and Indigenous knowledge. Students explore the concepts of ecosystem interconnectedness, human impact through time, Indigenous ecological knowledge, all the while engaging in hands-on systems thinking and solutions-oriented learning. Now, the custom-designed Eastern White Pine food web cards by John really transform abstract ecological relationships into tactile, visual, and collaborative learning experiences. By literally connecting the species with string, students see the web of life and how every action, human or natural, ripples through the system. And lastly, another example in Lesson 8, students learn about nature in the city. For instance, students engage in urban tree mapping by identifying and recording street trees by species, location, and seasonal changes. This builds awareness of urban biodiversity and helps students see their streets as living ecosystems. Students will also have the opportunity to collect citizen science data and contribute observations to platforms like iNaturalist. This connects students to a global network of scientists and community members working to protect the nature around them. Now, students can also track phenology changes in the city by monitoring tree life cycles, like bud burst, flowering, fruiting, and leaf change over time. This helps detect shifts in seasonal patterns that can signal climate change impacts. And we have also opportunities for students to interact with GIS and mapping tools. I want to leave on the note where we have opportunities for students to also create field journals and photo documentation, which fosters closer observation skills and creates a personal archive of the city's natural rhythms. But really at the heart of this 6 through 8 curriculum is also some of the climate impacts. So students have a chance to analyze climate impacts by comparing historical and current phenology data to see changes over decades. And this really encourages critical thinking about how climate change affects everyday urban life. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I didn't go too long. I'll turn it back to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Jessica. You were just fine. Appreciate all the information you shared. So we got one more to go, and then we will take some questions. You can still type your question in the chat. There's time. We also had some that were emailed directly to us, so we can also share theirs. But first, Dr. Kasheen Suzanne Cullick. She's a teacher, educator, learning designer, and researcher whose work blends ecological literacy, body wisdom, and justice. She invites her learners to feel this work, not just think about it, because caring for the earth is inseparable from caring for each other. Welcome, Kasheen.
Thanks. Hey, y'all. Let's share my screen here. There we go. Okay, awesome. Thanks for that introduction. And yeah, so my name's Kasheen, and I had the honor and the pleasure to be thinking about the 9 through 12 curriculum. And this unit is called Look Down, Look Up, Protecting Our Land and Knowing Our Place. So the driving question for this whole unit is, how do ecosystems function, and how can science support their protection and restoration? And so in this unit, again, similarly, like all my colleagues have said here, they've done a great deal to like kind of lay that out. A lot of the same themes here in this curriculum as well, where you can pick them up at any place and infuse them into your class. And this specifically is based on high school science standards that are rooted in ecosystems, interaction, and in energy and different dynamics. And so some sub-questions were, what defines an ecosystem? How do components interact over time? How do environmental shifts affect different species? And thinking about the human impact of that, like how do human histories shape this? And then thinking about energy. So when I say, just kind of going back to that driving question, how can science support? When I say science, I say that very encompassing. So sometimes we get these two fields, which we want to steer away from binaries, because the world doesn't really work in binaries, but there's like hard sciences and soft sciences, and we're trying to blur these together. I know that with my 9 through 12, trying to blur this together of like, all of these different sciences are worthy and have so much deep knowledge involved in them. So there's different types of sciences that are infused in this unit. Great. So some core activities that students engage in this unit are investigating local ecosystems and species. One example is witch hazel, which you see here on the screen on the right. Conducting seasonal observations using the Cycles of Gaia ecological calendar, which you see here on the left. And then engaging with different community experts, conducting interviews for the final product, which I'll get to in a second, and thinking about indigenous knowledge systems of the particular place and more broadly and globally, and then integrating science and history and creative endeavors. So it's really transdisciplinary, like a lot of the folks said that were speaking before me. And we'll see this in the final product. So the final product, or the culminating product, is called Rooted Wisdom. And the project is at the end, and you'll see this as I go through the sequence. It's like the last weeks, the last 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how much time a teacher has, for students to create a multimodal ecological guide, blending science, storytelling, and community voices to explore a local ecosystem. So they have choice in this, and that's really important to name, that students are choosing this and going to conduct their own mini research project at the end, once they learn, a good chunk of information around these different standards. But there will always be like inquiry and the action piece. So you can see here on the right, the public action component. So we're really encouraging teachers to get the knowledge out that students are learning and engaging in. When knowledge becomes public, people care, about it more. Even students, like me presenting here, right? There's more like, I got to prepare for this in different ways than I might if it's just a project, right? That a teacher grades. So some different examples are exhibitions, storytelling, digital zines, social media campaigns, planting projects. And this can be also just like students creating a field guide that has their own like artistic like pizzazz to it. Really, there's a lot of endless opportunities here for students to really take what their expertise is and run with it while infusing the knowledge that they've learned from this unit. So the first week is the inquiry kickoff, and then diving into the Cycles of Gaia ecological calendar. And so this is where students really are immersed, like without knowing at first, like getting their excitement about what they're going to learn about. So teachers will share different videos, texts, some hands-on experiences where they go through different guess what you're learning about, and they have just like different clues throughout the lesson and throughout the week of what they're going to learn about. This builds like excitement for, what they're going to learn about for this unit. And then the second piece, which is week 2, is really diving into the Cycles of Gaia ecological calendar, but also comparing and contrasting that to our Gregorian calendar, right, that we operate on. Like, what's the difference? Where did they come from? What are these roots? And really analyzing that deeply. Additionally, in this unit, or in this week, excuse me, there are different calendars from like the Pequot peoples, from Turtle Island around the 13 moons, and then a more global, if you're in the United States, example from Australia and their calendar. And so students really dive into these different types of telling of not time based on our time, but just through the earth, right? And then here are just some examples on the right of what different tools that students or teachers can use during the inquiry kickoff to pique students' curiosities of what might come next. Great. And then week 3, students dive into like, what is an ecosystem? What do they know about it? What makes an ecosystem thrive or decline? Thinking about different scientific terms like biotic and abiotic, comparing local and global examples, thinking about disruption, and then doing an ecosystem investigation. We included a few in there as an example, but really suggest always, as much as possible, to root into your local ecologies. But there are examples there that are, throughout the lesson for you to just use if you just want to pull and teach that lesson. Additionally, during this time, students will engage in a personal ecosystem map. So they'll go out and like similarly, I think Denise mentioned, like go outside and take notice of the world around them by using their field guide journals, and also just like, and noticing, right? And this lesson also has this idea of two-eyed seeing, an indigenous concept of like two-eyed seeing. So that helps with this personal ecosystem map as well. And at this time, students will also start to think about interviewing people. If they want to interview people for their final product, the Rooted Wisdom product, they'll start that. And I forgot to mention, there are mini lessons that are throughout the unit, and that have a specific, like just a mini lesson task that you can do. So for example, one is like, how do you interview somebody? How do you interview somebody with a different background than you? What kind of questions do you ask? How do you formulate questions? So different mini lessons like that support the larger lessons or the weeks in the high school case. Great. And then week 4 is systems thinking. This is where students are using systems thinking to model energy and flow. And this is really rooted in quantitative modeling. And this is the space in like the carbon's role in quantitative modeling and in different energy pyramids, excuse me. But this is the space where I suggest and say to teachers in the lesson plan that if there are like technical labs, like science labs that you want to, infuse into here, this would be a great place to do that around like the systems thinking piece and how carbon plays out in our world and on our planet. Great. And then week 5 and 6, thinking about human impact and ecological restoration. So the first part of this is students focus on a keystone species, specifically the beaver. You can see our friend right there. And watch some videos, informational videos from scientists around, the impact of the beaver, and how it actually helps in ecological restoration. But then they'll also look at different keystone species and do a little mini case study on keystone species in their particular land, like in their land or learn in their ecology, to focus on and learn a little bit more about. And then additionally, the human impact piece, they're going to do, I suggest a case study on the Klamath River Renewal Project, which was In the Pacific Northwest, there was a dam, and the dam was removed, and life has come back. Salmon have shown. The indigenous people of that land have been fighting for that for a really long time. And so that provides a case study to think about the impacts that us humans cause, right? And great. And then lastly, they're going to engage in critical dialogue about everything that they learned. So this is through a Socratic seminar. And so there's selected texts for them, but they're also going to comprise everything that they learn and pull out questions that they want to ask their peers, and ask each other, and challenges they might want to challenge each other. And it's really a student-led space for students to really get into it, and really ask each other like compelling questions. So there's a lot of like ELA, which is like reading and writing, is interwoven throughout the different weeks throughout the unit. And this one really puts them, I feel like, all together, and students begin to really like engage in that dialogue. And I just wanted to end with the last weeks 8 through 10. This might take a little bit more. Everything's pretty flexible. There's suggested times for each week. And you're hearing me say week rather than lesson, because it's a little bit more hefty of content. So the last couple weeks, they'll be working on this project and running that independent research. So thank you.
No, thank you. We appreciate it. Thanks to you all. What a wonderful presentation of what you can do to connect students back to the rhythms of the earth. So you have just heard 4 incredible visions of what earth-connected learning can look like now. So let's get to the questions. Presenters, if you could turn your screens on and unmute yourselves. I think I have some questions directed for all of you. And I will direct them to who I think is best to answer them. So Denise, you're up.
Yeah.
Rainy day, stuck indoors. How do you still help your students feel connected to the world outside?
Okay, so one specific example in our school, particularly popular in first grade and kindergarten, is we utilize those great classroom windows. And sometimes the rainy days are the days, because there's not a lot of traffic, in and out to the playground and everything. That's when students are better able to observe birds and squirrels and the interactions of all the animals outside. So for example, in our kindergarten classrooms, we have images of birds commonly found on our campus, all on the window frames around. And on rainy days, one of the most popular indoor recess activities is to go to the windows and watch them, and then try to identify them and come up with solutions if they're not using all the different bird feeders that we made. In fact, when on our campus, when Park and Rec actually cut back some of our branches, the students were noticing that our numbers of birds were decreasing. So they made this basket using chicken wire and a whole bunch of branches and created a safe space for the birds to hide when they're going back and forth to the feeders. So sometimes those rainy days where you're stuck inside are a great opportunity, but also, watching videos, lots of things where sometimes during the very rushed day full of content, you don't have the opportunity to really lean into those types of observations. So that's just one suggestion.
That's great. Thank you. Our next question, I think this is for you, Kasheen. If a high school teacher wanted to start small, what's a first step that still feels meaningful?
Yeah. Let's see. I think it's creating like the field journal, which is in the mini lessons, I think, and just like get students to observe the world around them, obviously modeling what that looks like for them. But I think that would be one task that would feel really important. I guess I'm trying to think out of the weeks. I think what would really engage them was like the human impact, like thinking about those case studies with like what the human impact on ecosystems, and thinking about their own place. So I think that might be a good starting point, but that might change depending on your students and who you are, but that's intuitively where I think I would go.
That's great. Thank you. Oh, John, this one is for you. If I wanted my students to make their own version, no tech, not all the fancy, tools that you'd use, what is the simple way for them to start?
I think paper and pen are a great way to start. And even with all my fancy tools, I like to start that way. And although drawing a circle is quite a challenge, making it perfect, but there are some low-tech tools for that. And I think drawing a circle, because the cyclical nature of the calendar is really important. And observing. So it could be as simple as choosing one species and marking along a circle with the 12 months marked on the circle, tracking one species through a year, especially through some of the more dramatically changing seasons, the spring or the fall. And, or several, you could mark a couple species and find a way to mark your observations on that circle. Maybe maybe just put a little green circle every day that you go and see that species with leaves. And find some sort of symbol language to record the observations that you make. And the fun part really is coming up with a visual system, and then watching it turn into something. That's kind of what this was for me. I didn't know what it was going to look like before I did it. I kind of came up with this format for it to follow, and then seeing what comes out of it is the fun part.
Thank you. All right, Erik, I think you should take this one. For someone who's hearing Cycles of Gaia for the very first time, can you kind of paint us a picture of what that actually looks like in everyday life?
Sure. I mean, I think as John started to describe, I mean, you're really seeing the mapping of the ecosystems we're embedded in. But it's also that visual map starts to replace the assumptions that we grew up with, right? So I can't tell you how many people from Connecticut and New England have said, oh, it rains about as much in the winter as summer and spring and fall. I didn't know that, right? Like just starting to see the observations on the Cycles of Gaia calendar. Or, wow, most leaves come out late and mid-May, not in April or March, which is technically the start of spring. And so many of the flowers that come out are, in June, and most are white. Like there's so much sudden new information to help build your map, your mental map, to replace those assumptions that are just kind of you work with without kind of knowing, right? And so that opens up all this opportunity to start observing and cross-referencing this information that we have in a visual with what's going on. And so, now I see with new eyes the trees around us and around me, and it really just starts to kind of deepen my relationship with the natural world around me. That's the exciting part for me, that this Cycles of Gaia calendar has done that, and even more. And again, let me thank the teachers, because I learned so much as I edited these 4 curricula, about maple trees and pine trees and witch hazel. But so just those that we kind of chose to highlight 3 of the 20 species that have such a deep cultural role, economic role, to really go in depth at different levels. But also just kind of, even in the simplest ways. Kasheen was asked which kind of one thing to focus on, and she writes such a beautiful guide to interviewing. So I'd almost say add to her suggestion of everyone could pick an ecologist or a maple producer or a indigenous elder, if with respect and appropriate acknowledgement of their time and wisdom, ask some questions. And it's such a great opportunity for classes, and these curricula give advice on how to really deepen and connect with those who know the environment around us, but also the environment and the ecosystems themselves.
Thank you. So this starts with middle schoolers are a tough get. So I think this is for you, Jessica. For schools without green space, what's one example of a place or moment where your students will still feel connected deeply to nature?
Yeah, and that's such a great question. First of all, the connecting deeply to nature part is obviously kind of an ongoing relationship that you want to foster between students and nature. So that takes a little bit more time. But in New York City schools, there's been a lot of growing partnerships with organizations that create hydroponic classrooms. So basically green spaces within the classroom that gives students an opportunity to access nature in their daily setting and see it and interact with it. It even brings in, certain creatures that are attracted to the plants into the classroom, if you don't have your windows closed. But other opportunities would be, if there's a playground. I didn't have a playground accessible, but I did have the hydroponic classroom within the last 5 years. And playgrounds are a good place, but also if the school has a green team, or if they're even thinking about creating a green team, that gives so many access points, so many opportunities for, students to engage with green spaces, or just kind of begin speaking about the importance of green spaces in those settings. And it can be within the classroom setting or with additional opportunities to extend the green team on field trips and the sort. But yeah, use all the resources you have available to you. Middle schoolers are a great bunch. You just have to use their energy for the best purpose. So getting them outside is amazing.
Okay, thank you. All right, last question. I think this is for you, Carrie. If a teacher only had one afternoon to try this out, what's a fun, doable project you suggest?
If it was one afternoon, I might suggest looking at the ecological calendar, giving the kids an opportunity to really look deeply and see what they notice about it, see what they think about it, maybe do a see, think, wonder with the ecological calendar. This is what I notice, this is what I think, this is what I wonder, and then get the kids outside. Can they find any of the things that they noticed on the calendar in their schoolyard or nearby? Again, just as Jessica said, it's great to get them outside. They have so much energy, they have so much enthusiasm. So if they can do that and really experience it for themselves firsthand, I think that's probably the best way to start.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Erik. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Jessica, John, and Kasheen. And of course, thank you to all of you who have joined us on this webinar. We will send the replay and resource links within 48 hours, so watch your inbox. Or you can also just check cyclesofgaia.com, and you should see resources there as well. The cycles of Gaia are always turning. May we walk with them, teach with them, and live in a way that keeps this planet thriving for generations to come. We appreciate you. Thank you and good night.